Oh, wait, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, isn't it? Okay, I have a poem. Roses are red, violets are blue. Ome wa mo shinderu!
The opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
For Saturday night, February 13th, 2021, this is episode 35 of the Anime Roundtable Canada. Good evening from 6 Points, 10 minutes south of the Anime North compound in the west end of Toronto. Mike Nicolas here, really. James Austin, Kevin Ng, Mohamed Sharmarke, Geoff Greig here, virtually. A reminder that if you have any questions or comments or want to tell us we're wrong on something, we'd really want to know. AnimeRoundtable@gmail.com is our email address. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Roundtable. And our show notes and archive can be found on our website, AnimeRoundtable.com. And yes, we do have a Twitch, YouTube, and Discord, but what can you do? But I will at least mention that if you give us a follow on Twitter, you're likely to get a message from us because we do like talking to anybody out there. Okay, let's get this part of the story out of the way. It's a little bit of an elephant in the room. Yes, this morning, Toronto time, late night Japan time, late night Saturday, I believe it was, there was an earthquake in the east again. And it was in and around the Fukushima area. I think it registered a 7 on the Japanese scale. What's the reports out there? Anyone have any latest updates from the earthquake?
No sign of Godzilla yet.
From what I saw about the scale, it was on the upper levels of their scale system, but thankfully, as of a couple hours ago, it seemed there was, no, grievous injuries. Like there will always be injuries when that sort of thing happens, but it looks like it's not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, that seems to be the story.
I checked in with my friend who lives there. He's good.
Okay,
He's alive.
that's the good news.
I'm sure the region is very fortified. Unfortunate as far as the reason why, almost 10 years ago now. But I'd like to think that silver lining that has helped. Obviously, it wasn't. It seems like there was no tsunami risk for this earthquake, so that will cause a lot of the damages and more catastrophic injuries. But still, I'd imagine that they are more prepared than they used to be.
Lessons learned, you gotta think. Every version, every catastrophe, every pandemic will, like, you think you're prepared. No matter what, your best laid plans will be short in some form, and you hope to cover that up, but inevitably something still always comes up the next time. This was, according to experts, more like a major aftershock of the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake. So, well, these things just keep happening. That's the takeaway I got from, takeaway is not a good word, but that's the reports thus far. According to NHK World, 100 injuries have been reported, but none serious. That's the good news. And yes, there is no other inevitable disaster, according to I think it's TEPCO still, or at least the authority that runs the power plants in that area.
Mm.
So in that sense, it's I'm not going to say good news, but more of a relief to know that part of the
Yeah.
story at the moment. And yes, we are a couple weeks away from the 10th anniversary of the Great East Japan earthquake. So yeah. But there's another pause for thought right there. And yes, glad nothing more than just minor damage and things falling off shelves is
Oh,
really the worst we could say at the moment. Although
I
if you
am.
have large collections on shelves, at very worst, you're probably spent much of Sunday putting them back up.
Oh, I
I
saw some
imagine there was.
photos. They were not good.
I imagine there was also some unfortunate broken Valentine's Day gifts
Oh yes, that's right.
at play, unfortunately. But
That's right.
hopefully they can be remade or store bought the next day.
It's the thought that counts. So that with that out of the way, and as I said, we had to acknowledge it. This is one of the regrets of being on Purgatory back in 2011. We didn't have a chance to acknowledge the earthquake when it happened back then. I think the most I did was do a little spiel that basically closed out the version 1 era about a year after the earthquake there back in 2012. But yeah, I want to get that little sobering piece of news out of the way. Although that all said, I'm sure we're going in for another shot later on when we do the COVID update. Okay. Well, we had the intention of doing episodes on consecutive weeks a couple weeks ago, but we didn't get around to it because we've been nicely occupied by some good stuff over the last couple weeks. We mentioned 2 weeks ago in the community calendar about the Japan Foundation Film Festival Plus, or the Japan Film Festival Plus, as I think it's officially called. It had the Canadian, Mexican, and Brazilian legs over the last week. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds. And memories, which we'll talk about as well in a few minutes. So let's start with the good stuff. Okay, did anybody watch anything during the Japan Film Festival Plus this week, since this has been probably the only chance to do so since it's in Canada?
I was only able to watch Tsukiji Wonderland.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? All right, all of you get failing grades on this one.
That was the perfect pause to insert the crickets sound effect.
I know. You were one step ahead of me on that one, Kevin. Okay,
Hopefully they're nice crickets, right?
as usual.
As someone who grew up keeping a lot of amphibians and reptiles, there are no nice crickets. They are loud. If they escape, they are unpleasant. Sorry for this tangent, but crickets are garbage. I wish Canada would legalize pet food roaches already. They are no more invasive than house crickets, which are also European. The laws are weird.
Unfortunately, they decide to legalize marijuana first. Sorry, Geoff.
Horrible
Okay.
priorities.
All right. Well, where do we want to go? Because just a quick background, in the Canadian leg of the film festival, there would be 28 films that would have came up over the last last week. It's a 10-day festival. It'll actually end tomorrow on Valentine's Day, February 14th. So of the now, what is it? 23 of 28 films shown, I have seen 16 of them. So now you know how my week went. And I can give a little pieces on each of them, but let's start with the common ground here because Kevin mentioned he saw Tsukiji Wonderland, which was on last night, Friday the 12th. And I know he's not the only one who's seen it. I saw it last night. James mentioned he was curious about that one, about all of them, but whether or not he watched them, we'll find out in a couple seconds. Geoff mentioned to me he saw it a couple of years ago because this is a 2016 film.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it a while back, but my memory is hazy on that one. But I know it was a good one.
Which means you didn't see it last night.
Correct.
F.
You suck.
I get a C, right, for seeing it 4 years ago.
It's a passing grade. Well, we already know. Okay. Well, what do you want to say about at least any impressions of that documentary? It was made in 2016, I believe it was. It documented a year in the life of people who live and work in that area at the famous fish market. And it is obviously set before the market closed in, I think it was 2018.
Yeah, because it was at the former location and that was a very different time back then. And it was, you could actually go in there. It was like a working fish market, unlike where it is now. So they've changed up how they did it.
It's in Toyasu now, and it's a lot more polished, for better or worse. Yes, it's more like any visitors are probably relegated to
Yeah, it feels
observation
like they're
decks,
away from the
basically.
action. You know what I mean? Like it feels like you were in the action at the old location and stuff like that, with the people trying to get the fish and bid for the fish and stuff like that. You weren't, there wasn't almost a wall, like everyone could interact with each other. And then you also had the restaurants nearby that if you went really early in the morning, you could get the freshest fish imaginable probably to eat.
Well, there was this one scene that's actually quite telling. I think it was a whitefish, a flounder, and it was so fresh that the sushi chef, sliced it up and then just salted it down just a little bit, and he said, "Ooh, wow, the thing reacted to the salt. That must mean the cells are still alive." And then the camera zoomed in on the fillets he just cut, and the things were pulsing,
I could believe
which
I
I
that.
thought
love
was
that.
a really
Yeah.
that was a great scene. That was a great scene, by the way, I thought. But yeah, it did. It gave a bit of a background, gave a historic background to the market in terms of everything that facilitated the building of the market, and it did a snapshot of the people who work in it. Tsukiji now, my understanding is yes, the fish market itself is long gone, but you can still eat there. You can still do some sort of shopping there and eating and dining there. So there's some limited use to it now. My understanding also is the abandoned areas will be used as marshalling areas for transport buses during the Olympics, and then the area will be redone. But and they did mention in the documentary itself, at the time it was built, which was I think in the late 20s, it was considered an architectural marvel. Nothing like that type of structure had existed yet. I don't know. Certainly, I guess not in Japan. I'm not totally sure about the rest of the world, but by all accounts, it was a marvel, and the structure more or
And I
less
think that's
stayed the
what gave
same
it
throughout
the thing
its
that people
history.
wanted to visit. Like you don't really see something like that anywhere in the world, and you weren't able to get that close in an actual fish market. And so that's why it was interesting. But of course, then times change, right? So
Hmm. Yeah, and then of course, yeah, it's a story about the culture of the fish market as well. I would like to witness a tuna auction just once in my life, just to see like some of the stuff that happens. And it's funny because all of the fishmongers there, when you interview them, they will admit that they try and psych each other out. They try and deceive each other. And it's nothing personal. It's just the culture there, right? You are, in the end, in competition with each other. But the impression I get is that the competition is fierce but friendly. Because there's a camaraderie that does exist among the wholesalers that roam the market. And that once you're there, you're kind of there for life. But it has its own. It does depict its own culture. That's what the documentary really wanted to let you know. And it's a fascinating, fascinating story. And I guess a good snapshot because obviously things are a little different now since the market moved to Toyasu. It's Toyasu, right? I hope I got that right. It moved a couple kilometers away from the original location. And pictures, as I said, looking at some of the pictures on Google, it's a lot more polished and looks more like a mall than anything. But a really fascinating documentary. And if you get the chance to see it, it's worth a watch. I don't know where I want to go. You guys got the list of the titles? I can, if there's a title here that I meant that was in the film festival that you think I saw?
Did
Maybe
you
I'll
watch
mention it.
Kickheart? Did you watch Kickheart?
Kickheart. Weird. It was a 10-minute. It was a 10-minute short. It was, for reference, all of the animated shorts, almost all of the animated shorts were provided by Production IG, and that made up about easily a third of the 28 titles. Kickheart was a 10-minute short about a orphan who becomes a pro wrestler who wrestles to help out his orphanage, but comes across a enemy he cannot defeat, and there's a little twist with it at the end. I don't know if you know the rest of the story there. You know the rest of the
I
story, Kevin?
I owned it at one point.
Yeah, because
I
that was a
pitched money for the
Kickstarter, yeah.
Kickstarter back in the day.
Okay. Oh, it
Yes.
was a Kickstarter. Okay. It was just, it's one of those, you do it to experiment, but not necessarily like just it is an expression of art, I suppose.
Just with the
Like,
concept of wrestling, it reminds me of the move the Calamari Wrestler, which is the English title. If anyone's seen that, it's a live action though.
okay. But I have nothing really bad to say about it because it was just a short. Had its funny ho ho moments, I guess. But and obviously it has a very colorful, bizarre, psychedelic type style to me. I wonder what it would be like watching that stoned. That's that's just the thought I came away with. Okay, any other title?
Tokyo Marble Chocolate.
That was a talked about title back then, I think. I mean, I remember hearing the name all those years ago. And this was what? I forgot. 2007, roughly?
Uh,
Anybody?
I
jog my
don't
memory?
remember off the top of my head. I don't feel like it was talked about much though. Yeah, you're right.
I
2007.
mean, it was an
Because I'm not the
yeah, it was a name I remembered, but I never got around to watching, and I'm glad I didn't. And I want the hour
Oh
back.
no.
I was kind of disappointed by it. It just did not ring with me. It's a typical, you know, it's a typical romance comedy type thing you'd see for anime. And it tells the story from both sides, both the guy and the girl. It has a little bizarre aspect to it, but it's just there's nothing. Neither of the characters rung to me. The art style didn't feel anything special either way for either its nostalgia or how cutting edge it could have been in 2007. It just it just fell flat with me.
Mm.
But I'm wondering, so it has me wondering why it's stuck in my head 14 years some odd years ago. Cuz as I said, it had been of note for some reason, I think. And it was the one name that I recognized looking through the list of films to be shown at the festival. And I actually earmarked wanting to see it. And yeah, maybe it's one of those things where you had such an expectation of it because of the hype that was in your mind over it, and it just fell
Totally.
flat to me. I just felt nothing for it, really.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, I'm sure you weren't alone in that
I know
sentiment.
yeah, as I said, and you know you know me, when I talk about whether or not about any review of an anime, I've said it before. If I can't watch the whole thing, then maybe generally speaking, I can't watch it. I was able to watch this. Thank goodness it was only an hour, but it was just, it was just disappointing. I was so underwhelmed by it.
Did you see Norman the Snowman?
That one I didn't. Yeah, there was two
Yeah.
Norman the Snowman movies. I made it like this was one of those. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't among the 16, and I don't know what to make of them.
Just
So I can't
the
really
the
speak to it. But
the
what was your
movie
thought?
posters make me interested only because I only learned recently that all the so for those of you listening, these movies are stop motion, and the style sort of reminded me of the Rankin Bass holiday specials, and I only recently discovered that those were all animated in Japan. Like they are essentially Japanese productions. I think the creator or the animator worked in China for a while, but I had no idea there was a Japanese connection to those movies. A little bit different of style with Norman the Snowman, but that just clicked with me. I'm like, oh, it's interesting to see the tradition of stop motion in Japan, because I don't think people associate stop motion animation with Japan. They think of Nightmare Before Christmas or Laika, so Paranorman and
Tim Burton.
Well,
um, the other Coraline and
Yeah,
Hmm.
the California Raisins back in the day too. That was a popular stop motion. I did see one of them, Gone the Little Fox, which is based on a popular Japanese fairy tale about it's about a boy who or a young man who goes after a fox, and how the fox tries to help out the young boy after he experiences tragedy. And I'll leave it at that. That's a story for you guys all to find
Mhm.
out later on.
So this is one that I didn't realize was on the schedule until now, and I would have actually made the effort to see this if I knew. Did you watch 0.5 millimeters?
That was on last night. I missed that. Oh, and it's one of those. It's a 3 hour feature. I read about it, but I actually missed it.
Uh,
So that was on the same night as Tsukiji Wonderland, actually.
oh,
Well,
shoot.
just a quick way that goes. So you had the chance to have watched that through today, actually. The 2 to 3 films would be offered on a 24-hour basis, beginning at 7 p.m. each day of the festival, and they'd be up, as I said, for 24 hours, and then they'd be taken down. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was up. That was there. But I personally I didn't see it either, so I guess I can't say anything. Boy, you guys are your aim. All your aim is good. You're talking about asking me about stuff I didn't see. Okay. Does anyone have one more, or do you want me to just single one or two out myself before we move on?
There was one that I'm trying to remember. Just going through. Did you watch Tremble All You Want?
Tremble all you want. Yeah, I did. That was that's a funny ho ho. I call that funny ho ho instead of funny ha ha. It's a comedy drama about a woman who, how do I put this? Yeah, she's like in her 20s, has a job, gets asked out by one of her coworkers there, a rather goofy character, but then holds something in her heart for somebody she had a crush on in junior high. And what
Hmm.
happens later on in the movie when she meets up with him again at a reunion she arranged so she can meet him again. And we think of her as a very, like, she comes across initially as a very extroverted character, talking with everybody, but then we realize when it comes down to it, she actually becomes very shy and very insecure. And you see all that play out in rather goofy detail. I enjoyed it overall. It wasn't my absolute favorite of anything of the festival to this point, but let me just put it this way: I rate it higher than Tokyo Marble Chocolate.
Oh,
Um, but it was a interesting little piece. There's a part of me wondering, like, when she talks, sometimes it feels like at times she's a bit of an anime character. You know how you have those motor mouth type characters who just keep yapping?
yes.
Yeah, that's what it felt like at times. And at times I felt uncomfortable with the character because I thought this would have worked out well as an anime at points.
Hmm.
And in that sense. So, and this is like an ongoing feel sometimes. You see aspects that you've seen in anime and you wonder, and remember we have this ongoing discussion about anime being adapted into live action, and then I say to myself, maybe sometimes that's more than what I wish for. Maybe there are points where I feel maybe this isn't the greatest idea. And I had a moment or two like that watching Tremble All You Want, at least the way this character is. And I know this isn't, I don't think the movie is based on a previous manga or anything like that, but I came
Mhm.
away thinking that. But I understood where they were trying to come from with her, right?
Yeah.
Because when she's constantly talking, the extroverted version we see of the main character, it feels like the old this is what she wants to be. But then when she balls up into her shell, we that's what we see her as. I think we use the same terming when we talked about Dog Meets God all those years ago in version 1, right? The difference between, or the way Charles Schultz looked at Charlie Brown and Snoopy. Snoopy was the version of himself, of Charles Schultz he wished he was, and Charlie Brown is the version of Charles Schultz he thinks he was. And I think that's sort of what we see with this character in the way she goes. But I found it interesting in that sense. Okay, anything else? Or
I actually do, because I'm now looking at stuff that just catches my eye.
okay,
Stolen Identity.
Stolen Identity was good. I actually like that one. It's a suspense thriller.
They do good thrillers. More often than not, Japanese do good thrillers.
Yeah, they do. They do. And that one was interesting. Actually, there's a small tie with it. I'm willing to give with that one. First of all, I'm gonna just look up a couple names. First, the premise basically starts with it's a couple. The boyfriend leaves his cell phone accidentally in a taxi, was able to get it back with the help of his girlfriend, but then suddenly all these things start going wrong around them. Various forms of identity theft. But then it gets kicked up a notch when women who look a lot like the girl start turning up murdered. And that's where it starts to get really interesting. I'm trying to look up some of the profiles of some of the actors and actresses in it. The lead was played by a woman named Keiko Kitagawa. I'm just looking at some of her credits. Oh, she was in the live action version of I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. It's just off the top. And she's listed in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Okay, the other one I want to the other guy I wanted to point out was Yudai Chiba. He plays one of the detectives in this. And the link here is he was in the Netflix series Final Fantasy Dad of Light. He played the son in that. That's the true life, or the supposed true story of how a son used an online Final Fantasy game to reconnect with his dad by tricking him into playing it and then getting to know him within the game, which in itself is an interesting story. Maybe I went along thinking for a bit, or calling Dad of Light this generation's Denja Otoko, because I think the story played out on some boards as well as he was talking with friends. Or was it in the game itself? I don't know. Anyway, but Stolen Identity, that was on night number 2. That wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. And I think it was might have been the only suspense thriller during that week. Okay. Anything else, or want me to bring up anything else, or should I just quickly point out one or two here?
Project Dreams: How to Build Mazinger Z's Hangar.
Okay, that was the opening night movie. James, I wish you saw that. Oh, Mo, go ahead. Just quickly, Mo. Mo, I know Mo wants something to ask.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna ask about railways. Looks pretty cool.
Okay, I'll get to railways in a second because I did see that. Project Dreams: How to Build Mazinger Z's Hangar. Remember that line I said earlier about how would anime aspects look in real life? That's the comedic part of this story, because yes, it's about a one guy in an engineering firm comes up with the idea to try to build the actual Mazinger Z hangar and somehow gets approval to at least pursue it. And you know how space operas sometimes are less about the fighting in space, but more about the internal politics?
Yes.
That's sort of what comedically plays out here. Some of the office politics that got involved in all that plays out in a rather funny way. And also it's about how to realistically pull off the aspects of the hangar as well, including the platform by which the Mazinger robot comes out. And they want to get it every detail correct, but then a block comes up because there's science says these things aren't actually possible, so they look for workarounds and how to deal with every single little setback they have in planning it. Then they realize at the very end they don't really have the budget, although there is a reason they want to do the project in the first place. It is a real life comedy in that sense. It's not trying to parody. Well, it just parodies our fandom and our fascination with wanting these things in real life, I think.
Makes you wonder when there's going to be a movie about the Gundam.
Oh yeah, well, yes. I mean, you see all those YouTube videos or these YouTube discussions about making the lightsaber a real thing. You've seen those type of discussions online?
Yep.
Yeah, that's sort of along that line. How to accomplish something like that in real life. It's kind of funny, and going back to the Fred Schott Matt Alt talk back in December. That talk happened in the shadow of the American screening of Project Dreams during the American leg of the JFF Plus, and I think it's also a reflection of how much, well, and once again, it comes down to the themes of pure invention as well. How much sometimes we don't really grow up. How kidified current adulthood can be. That's sort of reflected in Project Dreams as well, because they go through like every episode of Mazinger Z to try and get every detail they could to realistically make the hanger, and every single premise that the anime depicts. It's actually pretty funny in that sense. Okay, maybe I'll save any thoughts on on other films during the film festival for another time. Oh, what was the other title? Oh, Railways, right? Yeah, Mohammed asked about Railways. Drama about a 49-year-old who has a midlife crisis and goes back to his hometown because he wants to become a train driver. There's a few other things that kind of spark the
Wait,
impetus of the story.
wasn't he
That's the basic version.
wasn't he like gainfully employed at like an electronics company and stuff, and like had a good life, but then decided to become a railroad? It sounds very like midlife crisis the movie.
It is in one sense, but a few tragic events also kind of serve as a catalyst for him wanting to do it, right? Like, yes, it was his dream as a kid, and he would express throughout the movie that it was a dream he forgot about as he went up the corporate ladder, or as he started at the very bottom of it, for that matter. And through it, as he went up the corporate ladder, he became more separated from his family. So going through the process of working as a train driver in his hometown kind of brought him close to his family again in one way. And then it led to a small problem that you knew would eventually come up towards the end, but I will tell you that was settled, I think, okay too. That was a good movie. I actually really liked it. It had a it it's emotional enough without really being a tearjerker, because there were a few of those as well throughout the festival. I will tell you that. Okay, we're almost 40 minutes in. Do we want to continue talking about the film festival, or do we want to get to the to memories now? We can talk I can talk about that another more now. I can save it for later on, another time after the festival's over.
I just really regret not watching 0.5 millimeters because I didn't recognize it until I saw the poster for it. Because I remembered
Okay.
the poster but didn't remember the name. And then I believe that did screen during one of the uh, Toronto Japanese Film Festivals.
Oh, when the JCCC has their version of it.
I believe it did.
Okay.
It was either
Okay.
that or maybe even the Japan Foundation. I don't remember. Probably it was probably the TJFF though.
Okay.
Yeah, I just couldn't make it
Well,
that day.
all right. Yeah, it did look interesting. It's just I couldn't give myself the time. It is a 3-hour movie. I will mention that. One of two 3-hour movies that the festival did have. And I think the biggest regret about this festival is beyond this, there aren't many online options to see any one of these, well, most, if not all of these, the 28 titles that were shown here. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think there's a download to own option in North America. Certainly, there wouldn't be on anything like Netflix or Prime or anything like that.
Maybe someone, hopefully, will get interested either seeing the American version or maybe they're somewhere else watching one of the other versions, right?
Well, it comes back down to also, remember we talked about streaming services looking for material, looking for content. And this is a nice trove here. Although I wonder how much the Japanese rights holders would feel about that, because obviously we've had that discussion before too, that maybe they'd be hesitant to give them to let these things exist on such platforms because that mentality's there still. But if there's another chance, and I think I forgot who. There's one more leg, and I forgot who's in it. I think it's Italy. I think Italy is amongst the last leg of the online version of the festival,
It's a
and that'll
few
be,
European countries, yeah.
yeah, it's a few European countries in a couple weeks. So, where if you're listening, check it. Really, really check it out. I think they just have to finish up making the subtitles for those
That's
before they.
assuming that their browser works because they had some security issues and I could not watch it on Chrome on my
Really?
computer. So
Wait,
Okay.
what?
yeah, there was various web browsers that it wouldn't work on in the last 24 hours. So they said that Microsoft Edge would work, and I tried that and it still didn't work. Yet somehow when I watched it on my phone, it did work. So I don't
Strange.
know.
Real strange.
Maybe it was like ad blockers or something. Did you like have VPN on? Because I know the platform they're using is the same platform TIFF used, so it's
Okay.
like
Oh,
super rock
Did
solid.
did that platform block VPNs? Because that would be another potential avenue for our probably mostly Canadian listeners.
It did. Ship,
Oh,
they went all out. But yeah, it's surprised. That's
wait,
surprising.
VPN
It
did
wasn't.
work or it did not work?
Did not.
Hmm.
Like, it worked fine on my Safari browsers on my iPad and iPhone. I will tell you that. So,
Yeah, no, I didn't have any problems in
and
Chrome.
then I was able to throw it onto my television through the Apple TV that in that way. But the only issue I would have had with it was a watermark on the left,
Oh
on the
yeah.
left. But that's about it. But geez, there's so much about a lot of these titles I wish I could tell you more about, but I guess we'll save that or check the Twitter feed because I did drop a few little pieces of trivia there. The trivia was interesting enough that the Japan Foundation Toronto decided to retweet it as well. But tell you what, I'll talk more about the Japan Film Festival Plus after it's done next episode, or just in some form in the future. Okay, but
Cool.
there was something else of note we should talk about. I think if the Japanese Film Festival Plus wasn't enough of a reason for us to be off last week, I know that the highlight for the others was seeing Discotheque's world premiere of the English dub they made for the 1995 classic trilogy Memories. And boy, is there a lot to unpack there. Okay, my memory, so to speak, of the movie was seeing this as a fan sub way back in the late 90s during the Anime Club heyday. And yes, it did get a lot of the reactions you probably thought it would have gotten, especially during Stink Bomb, the second story. But honestly, I haven't given it too much thought since then. I do remember that Sony had the distribution rights to the DVD in the early 2000s. I think I got it, but I don't remember much more. And obviously, there's a lot to talk about because of the presence of the Discotheque dub. Where do you want to start there? About any aspect of all that, about watching it.
I guess they definitely went all out using their Twitch platform. Like they've made quite a lot of use of it since they've been doing their what you could say announcement events and doing these different streams of some of the different series they have that aren't on streaming platforms like Grimm's Fairy Tales and some of the other ones. But this one, and even Justin Savakis, who was coordinating this dub and stuff like that with Sound Cadence, which was doing Stink Bomb, and the Otomo one, and then which was Cannon Father, and then what was it? NY Post. They did Michael Sinter Nicholas's dub studio. They did Magnetic Rose, like coordinating all that, and then of course getting in time to then put it up, but also doing those interviews because supposedly they did that the week of and stuff like that, and those after the fact were really nice to have with it. And then just the whole product itself was it was incredible. Like they
I
went
was
all out, even though in the interviews, for example, between Michael Nicolas and Justin Vegas, they're good friends, but they had the little funny comment saying, "I paid you shit to do this," and he still did. But you could tell that this was something they cared about. They cared about, and they wanted to give it the best look it could for all of them that were involved in this project. And you could tell because of Otomo, because of Khan, because of Yoko Kanno, there were so many people involved in this. Madhouse, Studio 4C, like it's just a part of the lexicon, the history and stuff, and some people haven't seen it. So giving it that type of dub and that hopefully will bring more people to view it because it really is of all the different shorts. Like remember, Otomo has done short project and stuff like that. This is one of the best ones you'll see of short animation.
somebody update me on this. Is this the first dub that Discotek has done? I don't think it is, but
No, no, it is not the first dub. They've done quite a few dubs before this with Sound Canes, of course, because as they mentioned there, they've worked with Sound Canes. They did the dub for the new City Hunter movie that
okay.
came out last year, Shinjuku Private Eyes, and that was with Sound Canes. And then the other thing is, remember they did do one Lupin special, and that was with Richard Epker, and I forget what his dub studio or what he set up to do that, but he helped out on that one with them, and they have done some other ones too, like Sound Canes worked on Ferme Roman with
Hmm.
them as well. So there have been others before this, but they
Well,
definitely went all out and they announced more to come. Like even what was it? I know in one of the previous online things they did, I know Mike Toole was joking he wanted to get in on the action because he's one of the few of the freelancers that hasn't done a dub and done a coordination for it because and he'd be a fun one to see how he would do in that.
and he'd be interesting because I know his background is in AV, so it
And the
wouldn't
funny
be.
thing is, they worked. He worked as the voice of the narrator in Banana. Was
Banana.
it the Banana Chan or yeah, something like that for the first season, and that was kind of funny, and he enjoyed that.
Well, it does come back to the point that they've made about dubs, which is it would only be for short projects because they really don't have the budget to commit to anything longer, to like a TV series or anything like that. So anyone hoping for add-on to the Kodocha dub that'll come out when they finally get around to doing the second part of the series, nope, sub only.
You would have seen that from remember Lupin Part Two because they were doing it one every year, but once they got to the undubbed parts, people were hopeful, but it's like, no, it was just too much to dub. Like, I think it was like over 50 episodes, or it's a ridiculous amount of
Yeah,
episodes they would have had to dub.
and they, as I said, they're a small house in that sense, right? And it's see, I asked the question because the way they termed all of this, and you already hinted at it, James, they didn't treat this like any other dub. This wasn't an average, quote unquote, average dub for them. This was different. There was something very different about the way they want to handle this.
Hmm.
And by all accounts, it sounded like everybody was recording from home.
Correct. I think there was only one person. It was the little girl in Magnet Rose, and unfortunately, as Michael Nicolas said, it was kind of impossible to do that for that one little girl. So they figured a way within the protocols to make it happen. Because in that case, he has been known for getting like dubbing, finding people that actually match the voices, or finding different people you wouldn't expect to dub an anime and stuff like
And they
that. And
actually
he's
got a
done
little
some
girl to
great
do
results and stuff like that
Mhm.
throughout.
that.
And
Hmm.
you've seen that in The Great Pretender, and you've seen that in Tokyo Godfathers, and we've seen that in other movies he's worked on, stuff like that, because he's done great work with G Kids recently for the past number of years too.
Yeah, I mean, we are getting like actual age of characters behind the characters, right?
I
Actual,
think with Cannon Fodder too, I think the boy was a real boy.
Correct.
From what I saw, yeah.
Correct. It was a real boy, and that one. Remember, they had mentioned in the interview for Soundkings that they looked at the different thing, but they were lucky to find a person within the age range, and he actually they had, I guess, some sort of home studio, so he did it away as well. But for sound kits as well, for some of those, for Cannon Fodder and for Stink Bomb, just like they've done with some of their recent dubs, and they've also done some stuff with Funimation. I know is they've been getting people across North America. It isn't just from Texas. They've been doing Texas, from California, from Canada. So because everyone's in their homes now, right? If they have a studio and they fit the bill, then they'll hire them on, and they've had some great results with that over the past year.
Sometimes people have had to improvise making their home studios and really making something that's honestly fairly makeshift but works anyway.
Because there were some Canadians in the dub for the ones that Studio Cadence did and stuff like that. And I know, what was it, the mother from Cannon Fodder, Ellie Ray, I believe, was Canadian.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else?
I think there's another one that played Kamada and Stink Bomb. I think that was Gianni Mataragano or something like that, I
Mhm.
believe. But I could be wrong. But they definitely had a very good mix, and they joked about, of course, Mike Pollock being in Stink Bomb and stuff like that. He did a great job as the general officer, and Mark Swint did a great job for the Heinz Becker and stuff like that.
That
Like
was
he was in
hilarious.
the interview
You know,
too.
he just got the tone down. That was just the way
I
they
think
put him into English. That was pretty good. I was
I
impressed.
think the best part of his interview though was he was a big sci-fi geek and all this other stuff, and Magnetic Rose, for what Satoshi Kon did and the whole team did, they had this whole sci-fi element down, and then those references, and then he told him about, remember, the fiance is named Carlo Rambaldi,
Hmm.
and you know where that name actually comes from, of course. The
Yeah.
sci-fi specialist that
Mhm.
did Alien, that did ET, and all this stuff, and his eyes, like Mark Swint's eyes, just lit. He's like, "Holy shit, that's real!"
Yeah.
Because like, there's so many things going on in these
There's some reference.
programs.
There's a lot of little references, and I didn't think about that one either. But yeah,
And
pretty
then, of course,
impressive.
there are things that you didn't think about back then that we probably are thinking about in the wrong tone these days now. Like the ship is named Corona, and then Stink Bomb, of course. We could probably go on about that. It's like you should not be taking pills off, like experimental pills off someone's desk, especially your boss's.
Yeah. Well, the timing of that. Well, Stink Bomb is probably the one that most people would have. As I said, that was just a tour de force, really, because it
And
was
there
just
was
bang, 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 right at one hit after another in that little short.
And sometimes you'll have the things, and I think one person mentioned it, the one line in Stink Bomb, and it shows that they really took the care going through that. It gives you the intention of the Japanese, but obviously was not the exact line. And that's the one where he's coming through the tunnel and they're just trying to freeze him out, like sending all that snow and all that stuff in there. And the English version was, we're gonna freeze them like effing Frosty the Snowman or something to that effect in English. And that's a great line, especially coming out of that military character, because he's just so pissed off with what's been happening. Like all these people just falling down, the planes falling down.
That's in the climax, right? That's in the climax.
Yeah, near closer to the midpoint end. But then in the Japanese, that line, and I remembered it because it was a little different, but it was basically the same thing. But we're going to freeze him out like an ice sculpture at the Sapporo Ice Festival or something to that effect. And it
Yes, and I've
does
seen
make
little
sense. Like he
documentaries
still has
about
the
that.
expression, but it doesn't feel the same, right? Like it definitely feels better when you have something. And I think for that one, definitely, if you're an English speaker, I think it definitely comes off
Well,
better.
you
Anyway.
did have me thinking. Yes, it starts to use jargon and slang that's updated to 2020. It's current slang. It certainly will. It's you hear terminology that wouldn't have existed in the mid 90s. I remember there are some terms that I heard throughout the dub that I said, "Hey, that's not 1990. That's a fairly recent term." I was thinking that, and I can't think of one right now specifically.
I was just thinking, it's like if there was one you could think of, because I didn't feel there was anything that took me out of the moment in my mind. Like I think all of them definitely were
It's really
on
just
point.
a word or something. Nothing that would change a plot or anything. It's just words that wouldn't have existed in that context back then.
It was kind of
And
interesting. I was thinking,
and it's not to say I had anything against it. It's just that's what stuck out. It stuck out to me at the time. As I said, but I don't
The
know.
only thing that really, I guess, pulled me out of it just for a second was I I adore Mike Pollock as an actor, but I'm just watching this and all of a sudden Eggman is there. Twice. He's more recognizable in Stink Bomb. He is an excellent actor. He does have range, but there was just enough of Eggman in that military general that I'm like, oh hi Mike. So that pulled me out a little bit, but I love hearing him and stuff. Steve Prince in the first short, as a child of the '90s, I recognize as Ken from Digimon, um, but he's aged enough, and the character was just different enough that I did spend the first 5 minutes or so watching of those shots in the ship or the space station, questioning if it actually was him or not. But overall, I thought the dub was excellent, and I really loved the interviews at the end of the entire presentation. There was, I think, a lot of value in all of those. I think it was what 3 or 4 segments that they had there.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think
correct. One segment with Michael Sinter Nicholas, one segment with Mark Swint, and then one segment with
with
the
three
Studio
major characters.
Canadian
Yeah.
crew and stuff like that. And that all happened during that week. So they really put everything together fast, but it was a very polished product. And I think originally they were like, oh, we'll just put it up, we'll do like a premiere and stuff like that, and it'll be our type of thing online. Because I think even if we hadn't been in COVID times, I think it would have been hard pressed for them to get into a theater or something like that. So it was
Yeah.
kind of nice to get. I feel like it was that theatrical type. How do you want to say experience? Even though not all of us got, some of us were on our computer screens. Not all of us were sending our screen to like a bigger one, of course.
Well, it's theatrical in the way we've been watching anime in theaters up until the pandemic. You know, do the intro, stick around after the credits. We'll share a few more stories, basically, right?
I think that might be what I was most impressed with the overall presentation. Like, this is my first time seeing the movie or the 3 shorts, whatever you want to call it. And I think going in, like, I wasn't really that interested or invested. I heard all of you talking about it, so I thought, oh, I'll give it a shot. By the end, like, I wouldn't say that any of these 3 shorts were my favorite pieces of animation that I've ever seen, but it was incredibly impressive. I thought it was an amazing set of 3 pieces, but most importantly, I kind of understood why they were giving it out for free, essentially, as the screening, because when I finished watching, I thought, yeah, this is something I would recommend to people to pick up. Like, there's such artistry and variety in the 3 that you get there. You have kind of a think piece at the beginning. You have relatively just a comedy in the center, and then a very art piece to finish it up. But it doesn't vary that wildly that anyone who you would maybe want to recommend one part to would be completely turned off by the other two. So I think they did a good job, and I was eating crow a little bit there because I'm like, why are they giving out this stream for free? Like, that's silly. But I thought it was a great idea after I
Well,
finished.
I think it was meant as to recent fans, those that weren't around in the '90s, a chance to be able to watch it and understand where we've been, where fandom has been, and where the industry has been.
And I
I think
think
we can.
there was appreciation, like even in the comments and in the interviews discussing that
Hmm.
some of what we saw in this animation and the shorts are better than what we see in some of the stuff produced today. So it definitely
Mhm.
still holds up in my mind, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said, look at the names again. Look at the names: Otomo, Kan, Kano, right?
And it'll be a good time for them too, because I know Kodansha is supposedly, at least in Japan, I'm not sure if they're bringing it over in English, but they're celebrating Otomo's works and rebringing them out again, I believe, this year, they were saying.
Mhm.
So hopefully that would bolster the sales of the Blu-ray that is going to come out in summer for this.
Yeah, no date announced yet though.
Yeah, it'll be soon though, as we know, summer 2021. So I guess between June and August. And then the other thing is, we know with a lot of these type of releases, it's going to be feature packed with extras and all that stuff. They did a great job with oh, I forget, um
Robot Carnival.
yeah, Robot Carnival, which was another thing, is shorts and stuff like that. So I feel a similar release to that, a Criterion type release.
Okay. But it's just Discotheque has handled the whole pandemic thing interesting. Maybe I'm not going to say right, because there's no absolute wrongs unless you're coordinating relief efforts. But the way they've handled it has been really interesting, and I thought really well done. The way they've managed their Twitch presence throughout all of this, doing premieres and then doing their panels and presentations. But I think they've turned out to be quite the star during this pandemic in terms of the companies. And
You
it's
know, the
one
freelancers, they have some really great freelancers, because you never see the owners, of course, out front. It's always the freelancers. So they definitely brought together a super team, and it wasn't overnight. It was over many years.
they've done a good job.
It was funny because they put out their solicitations this week. They got Scryed coming out in April, but the funnier one was, which people are talking about, is Rose of Versailles and then Saint Seiya, because both of them licensor requests. So Rose of Versailles is going to be called now Lady Oscar Rose
Mhm.
of Versailles. And
Oh,
then
I
Saint
saw
Seiya,
that. Yeah.
supposedly for some of the Saint Seiya stuff, Saint Seiya and then Knights of the Zodiac as a
Which was the
subtitle
other
under
which was the
Nicolas.
other name, yeah.
And that one supposedly happened years ago after they released a PS3 game, and the licensor started requesting that be used in,
Those
which is interesting.
those names be used?
It's
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
for Knights of the
interesting.
Zodiac. But Lady Oscar's new, so that's interesting. So it
Mhm.
makes you wonder.
It's
Well,
interesting because there was talk about how Discotheque was not willing to touch Saint Seiya again, because they released the movies in the past and they didn't do well. So then that meant
I
that they would not touch the TV series, which is what the diehards really want. But it's interesting now that they're putting this collection out, and this is probably going to be like the last hope of George Horvath, who's uh, he's known for his love for obscure 80s and 90s titles, especially Masami Kurumada's type works. So, uh, yeah, it's cool to see these come out. I hope it does okay this time around. I don't like Knights of the Zodiac / Saint Seiya enough. I did own the manga in the past, and it was a great read, but I just ultimately didn't think I would want to keep it in my possession. So I did eventually get rid of it, but
I
it's good.
I want someone to do a documentary about the popularity of this series in Latin America.
I was
I
gonna
think
That
say,
would be
like,
I think that
interesting.
yeah,
I
Latin
think that
America
is
is where it sells. Yeah, it's
it is
crazy there.
so fascinating. When I was living in Costa Rica, I lived near a place called Cafe Manga. It was an excellent kind of restaurant that was all anime themed. They had the scarecrow from Howl's Moving Castle. All the cutlery was like comic book and manga themed. It's an excellent place. I think it's still in operation. But they had a karaoke night, and wow, when Saint Seiya songs went up, everyone participated. There wasn't a single microphone situation going on there. But yeah, anyone I talk to from Nicaragua, Venezuela, all of them know and love.
Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. All of them know and love this series regardless of age. It's kind of their Dragon Ball.
And that's
Europe
why
as
I'm
Absolutely.
well.
surprised they don't have more like Spanish dubs for certain series. This one would be one you might want to put on because you could get more sales in the southern part of the United States and maybe Mexico and other places, you know what I mean? Which is interesting. But the thing is, I think for this one, for this release, why they released is they have the license, they have the ability, so why not just throw it out on Blu-ray? But I don't think it's going to move the needle that they're going to get anymore because the owners, from what they've told people at conventions, they don't want to see it ever again. It sold that bad.
Wow.
I've spoken to a couple of Hispanic coworkers in the past, and yep, one of the things that they would ask me is, "Did you read or watch Saint Seiya?" And I said, "Why, yes, I did." And we'd have like a
And then you
full,
become best
we'd have a
friends.
full 10-minute conversation about it.
I just wonder, I feel like our ability of what we saw as Saint Seiya and what they saw is so different, right? Because I just feel like we haven't seen enough of it out here in the English speaking world, but maybe that's just me.
Well, we had the Iran cover as our theme
I
song,
was
so
wondering if that was going to be brought up. No, it's interesting because it was popular virtually everywhere else but North America.
Wow.
Well, we've seen that with other sports series and stuff like that, like Captain Tsubasa and other things like that, right? That have just skyrocketed other places and just haven't hit the needle, right?
Well, here, yes. I guess every place is a little different. I mean, we talked around Matsumoto's death. Kimagure Orange Road was popular in Italy, and Yawara was popular in Spain, and I think France too. Kimagure Orange Road as well was popular in France. So I guess certain titles, certain classic titles, will have its stride at various points in the world. Yeah, Dragon Ball. I guess that's the one here, right? Good way to
I
put
think
it.
with Canada, I would give us Sailor Moon, just because I think that's a
You
bit
think
more
Sailor Moon?
unique.
Oh, because of the everything that surrounded its Canadian dub, I guess, and the way it was handled on Canadian television.
Yeah, like the fact that it I think has a more sustained fan base here. It was a little bit earlier here from what I know of the history of that airing. The sort of very local dub where we had, our, kids live action TV host talking about voicing a character in the show. Like it seemed very integrated, with the Canadian aspect of things in general, but even kind of in some ways a local Toronto scene, which we got a little bit of on a lesser extent with things like Metabots, but
No,
there
that's a
is
fair
this
statement. That's a fair statement.
interesting connection.
Yeah, Stephanie Beard. That was her name. That's
Yeah,
the or
I
Sugar
think
Baby was her nickname. But
and
yeah,
like
some of it was by TV at the time too, because you have all those PJs and the personalities, and it was the alley, it was the zone, it was breakfast zone, and all that stuff. It's like it kind of fed into that and helped Sailor Moon as well, because it became a cultural touchstone for a lot of us as children and stuff like that. And as many people remember, it's like Phil Guerrero, like PJ Phil, many years later on said, he joked, I can't remember if it was at a convention or where he said it, but he said, I'm walking into a bakery and this guy is basically giving him free baked goods and all this stuff, saying it's like, man, you really helped me as a kid, and it's like all this, and he's like, this was just my job. Like, and he's like, I'm getting these free baked goods. Like, it was kind of this funny thing. So they touched a lot of lives, and they just and it's funny too because they tried to replicate. I know the fellow that did Snit. They tried to replicate it. I can't remember which station, if it was Fox or where it was in the States. They tried to replicate the same thing they did here in Canada, and it just didn't take with the system of live action host segments in between and stuff like that. And I don't know why, but it didn't take.
hmm. Okay.
Mm.
Well, as I said, sometimes you find out sometimes you're uncomfortable with some of your legacies. Maybe scared of being typecast. Last week, Dustin Diamond passed away, right? And we talked. There was a lot of talk about him not being able to get work because nobody could he couldn't distance himself from Screech, and he was about fairly bitter about that. But he said later on in interviews, people would come up to him and say, "You helped me get through being an outcast myself with the way with the way Screech handled being that way."
Yeah, I think
And
Urkel had the same issue, same upbringing, or same thing happened to
mhm.
him.
and yeah, and Diamond said he came to terms with that at some point. And Tamil and Tomita kind of said something similar too on the topic of her returning to Cobra Kai playing Kumiko. Yeah, she kind of resented that for a while afterwards. But then she would say, "How cool is it that you have your own theme song in Glory of Love?" How many
Mhm.
actors or actresses can really say that aside from pro wrestlers? So she's long come to terms with it too, but she wanted to add some more authenticity with it. So it's, let's call it a interesting legacy. Sometimes not all legacies can be good, but they can both be good and sometimes complicated. And I think PJ Phil probably has an appreciation for that idea.
It's kind of funny because you remember some of his things in the other one he brings up, which is hilarious, is thinking about, I forget what it was. It was one of the times in the zone, and I think he was excited, right? So I think he used the F bomb, and he's talking
Oh, yeah.
after it. He's like, "Oh my god!" And he'd been on there long enough, but he's thinking, "Man, I'm gonna get fired. I'm just gonna get fired." And supposedly, I forget who they can complain to in Canada, but I think they might have got maybe one, two complaints or something like that. So they're like, "You can stay on." People that were offended across our great nation by an
Right.
excited F bomb, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's sort of,
Like, this is effing great or something was
yeah.
probably
Well,
what he
that's
was doing.
nothing like memories. For that, having said all of that, right?
Uh,
Well, let's take the break. When we return, we'll talk about cosplay and a story that we've left on the back burner the last number of weeks, and maybe a few other things. That's when we go through the headlines in brief. The bullets are coming up after this, when the Anime Roundtable continues on the Six Talk Podcast Network.
Do Japanese people have longer intestines than Westerners? Can sexy things give you anime style nosebleeds? Why are vegetables so insulting in Japanese? If you want to find out the answers to those questions and many others, then I've got a podcast for you. It's called Ichimon Japan. That's ICHIMON Japan. Ichimon means one question, and every episode we ask a question about Japan and dig deep into that topic. So if that sounds interesting to you, check us out at japankyo.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And the podcast now continues on this night before Valentine's, February 13th, 2021. Nicolas, Austin, Ing, Sharmarke, Greig, continuing the conversation with you in front of a virtual audience. Thanks for listening, and online via the Six Talk Podcast Network, official podcast Anime North. All right, let's start the segment with the obligatory COVID update, which is a mixed bag, I think, depending on who you ask. Here in Ontario, I think for the last week we've been under 1,500 positive tests per day, and the death count isn't as high as it had been in since last time we were on. But there are two concerns that could end up colliding with each other and could lead to something pretty spectacular for all the wrong reasons. The three variants that were first identified from the UK, Brazil, and South Africa. The UK one is becoming more prevalent.
Oh, and there's a new one now, Nigerian strain.
Okay.
So add to the
And
list.
and I think one of them is able to withstand some, at least one of the vaccines, but I think it's one that has yet to be approved in Canada.
I think they said the South African one was a bit stronger and might have some trouble with some of the vaccines.
Yes, yeah. So it's nothing that ultimately that can't that you can reformulate to address, but still an interesting concern considering that these strains might be more contagious. And
Definitely.
of note here in Ontario, which has been in a lockdown and stay at home order since the new year, roughly. They're going to start peeling that back a little bit beginning Tuesday. For reference, here in Canada, or at least in Ontario, much of the country will see a holiday on Monday. I think so will the US.
Yeah, it's President's Day for them.
Okay,
Now that they
here
have
in
a president.
Well, yeah. In Ontario, it's Family Day. I think it depends on what province you're in. If there's what holiday it would be, where depending on where you are, if at all. And so they'll start peeling things back here in Ontario on Tuesday, the 16th, and
Just in time for round 3.
COVID is watching all this and saying, "Nice,
The
fist pump."
wolves, the wolves are gone, so let's celebrate by spreading some raw meat around the neighborhood.
Oh boy. Needless to say, the opposition here is against it, but maybe more telling is the Ontario Hospital Association, who have criticized the move. And yeah, maybe they want to do this carefully, the provincial government, but who knows? I Vaccinations or vaccines rollouts of vaccines have still been kind of stunted. Where there hasn't been really anything positive. Hasn't really been anything negative either about the latest in terms of vaccine deliveries here in Canada.
Well, hopefully they're preparing on that front, all the provinces and stuff like that. We've heard the Pharmacy Association say they're ready and stuff like that because they've done flu shots. So hopefully they're getting ready and figuring out how are we going to get this out to the public in certain groups and stuff like that, whether it's for pharmacies or malls or God knows what.
I think there's a race between COVID and the variants and the vaccines. Which one will get to the masses first, and that'll determine the fate of a possible third wave.
Some really good odds on that, Mike. Some really good odds.
As I said, nice fist pump.
Well, you heard about the one story, right, in Vancouver about that one guy. I think he was in a condo and had what 100 cheeseburgers or something delivered to his thing. So, of
Oh yeah,
course, the police
and it turned
arrived
out to
and he
be
read this prepared statement, and I'm thinking to myself, really? I'm sure the cops were thinking really too. But oh man,
yeah about
that was
because he was
bad
an
legal
anti-masker and
advice. I
opened a
hope that
club,
guy
and
got disbarred because how do you like give someone bad advice?
we should put up a link to that. That's the guy who had the nightclub in his condo, right?
Oh
I
God.
And,
guess.
and, and
But
now
I'm just saying, it
he's
would have been
upset about
something if
the
he could
fines
have
because
ate
he says
100 cheeseburgers, wouldn't it have?
yeah yeah, and then he's upset about the possible fines because he says he now can't pay his staff. That's about right, right? Is that the crux of the statement, James?
I can't remember that exactly. I didn't realize he was running that out of his condo. I thought it was just a guy having a
We might
very
have
big
different
party.
stories. We might have a couple. We might have our stories a little confused. If you have the link, let me know. Okay.
I just added to the chat. And yeah, $17,000 in fines is kind of hefty, but at the same time, like, why you have a nightclub in your penthouse, dude? Come on.
But if that's what they
Listen,
found out after investigation, that's kind of crazy.
as I said, you COVID be watching and says nice. And and also I guess we should go with the other thing we've been talking about, Mohammed's death watch. We mentioned Dustin Diamond in the last segment, who died of an undetected cancer, which by the time it was had proceeded to stage 4. It was a type of lung cancer, from what I understood. Passed away at the age of 44. And okay, the one thing I have to say about Dustin Diamond, and And I'm hoping I'm not opening up old wounds, but this is just an observation because I said this to you guys off air. The statements from his fellow cast members from Saved by the Bell, because obviously he was most well known for playing Screech, that said quite a bit to me. I mean, yeah, you had the condolences type statement. I think the warmest he got from any of the original cast was from Mario Lopez. But I just came away with the feeling they were kind of lukewarm. I think the most warmest statement that anybody expressed over his death of note would have been Tori Spelling, who was a guest star on Saved by the Bell way back as well. That was actually her first acting gig, and she played a love interest of Screech. And she was way more warm about her feelings concerning Dustin Diamond, saying that was her first on-screen kiss, and acknowledged, yeah, they drifted apart, and we only saw each other the odd time at the odd public gathering. But she ended off her tweet by saying, I think it was a tweet or Instagram. I think it was an Instagram actually. But she ended off her statement saying, "Rest in peace, Screech. Love, your Violette," which was the character she played. And I thought that was the warmest statement that any star had given over Dustin Diamond's death, which said a little bit about maybe, as I said, how he might have still what type of terms he was on with the rest of the Saved by the Bell cast. And as mentioned, he had a complicated life, no doubt about it. But you know, that's the way. Just it's still sad in that sense, especially since I think he made a lot of people who felt like outcasts themselves feel like they could get somewhere. And I think that's how Diamond kept saying that when he learned of the type of impact he had on youngsters, he was at peace with Screech himself. The other noteworthy death was Christopher Plummer, who died, I think, a few days later. How old was he? Does anyone remember?
He was
We'll look that.
around. He was around
He was
90.
in
Like
his
he's
90s,
definitely
yeah.
like he was like 90, 91. Like he's definitely in his very early 90s because remember he had stepped back from acting and stuff like that, but he'd still acted into his later 80s and stuff like that, his later years, because remember he had the second Renaissance and he was a great stage actor. If you'd ever seen him at Stratford or Shaw festivals in Ontario, and I'm sure
He
we
was
all remember his greatest acting role in Priest.
most people remember him for Sound of Music, actually, I think.
Yep. The party
Um,
whistle then. Yep.
But I
and
love the
and
quote though, thinking about it, Mike, on that note of Priest in it was the later years where he had some roles that were obviously Oscar worthy, but he had some movies which weren't that great. And I think his joke was he got paid all this money in these garbage films so that he could do what he loved and stuff like that because he would go back to
mhm.
on the stage and stuff like that, and that allowed him to do that, which is interesting.
uh, I think some Star Trek fans call him the best villain from the Star Trek movies. He played Chang in Star Trek 6. It's pretty good, actually. That was pretty good. Well, there's that's the add-on, couple notches there for the count, right? Sad to hear, though. Okay, ready to move on? Okay, let's. I guess we should get on to some happier stuff. The bullets. These are small things which might become bigger things. And how many we got here? 3 or 4, maybe 5, I think, by my count. Okay, let's go with the first item. So this is a story that we've been following for a few weeks now. back around January 23rd, I think it was, our friend Matt Alt tweeted out that the Japanese government was considering a change to the country's copyright laws addressing the use of professional cosplayers and their use of intellectual properties in their paid work. I think this was brought up in a tweet. Kotaku followed it up with an article. I think some of the
Anime News Network, I believe,
anime
followed up
networks
on
also did a follow
that
up,
one,
and
and they followed up on some comments from one of the point people in the LDP
in the
party in
government.
regards to copyright and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think.
And that was Taro Yamada.
Mm-hmm. Actually, Matt Alt did follow up his initial tweet by saying, realistically, I suspect this wouldn't ever apply to the act of cosplay itself, but rather to those cosplayers selling products or services involving likenesses of copywritten characters or copyrighted characters. That's probably a fair statement. It
And I
sounds
think
like a fair statement.
it's interesting when you think about it, because we think of cosplay here in North America, and there's some people that do some incredible stuff, and I guess they probably make a bit of money, but nothing to the extent some of the big boys, I guess, in Japan do, because you see them talking about public appearances, merchandise, photo books, chat sessions, endorsements, and all this stuff, and you're thinking, holy smokes. And they talk about Anako, I believe, one of the biggest ones. And like now they say 90,000 a month. I'm not sure if that's an American or how they get that thing, but that's pretty impressive. And I'm sure that isn't every month, but that's still a nice sum of money. And it was interesting for her as well that she said sometimes to avoid like copyright infringements, she dresses as original characters and stuff like that when appearing on paid appearances.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing there. And I think, and Inako has stated she is represented by an agency. So that's that. I guess that's where the focus is. Remember that I regularly have been using the line recently about how fans can end up making more being commentators than the creators themselves and the producers themselves.
Hmm.
That's like that's the feeling I'm wondering here, right? You have fans, not really major creators. They're just offshoot creators, I guess, or creators of the culture. In many respects, that's us too, right?
Hmm.
But they end up becoming more prominent, or at least making better income than anybody than the people right at the right on the ground floor of all of this, which feels a little wrong. I get it. It's a little bit muddy for me at times. I mean, remember early on during Twitch's rise to fame, I think video game companies were asking where was their cut from streamers.
I think
That's
they're
what it,
still asking that when you see some of the takedowns on Twitch or the demonetization of certain videos, right?
yeah, I think like
And
that but
sometimes they aren't the company you think it is, which is kind
mm,
of interesting.
oh, yeah, okay, just give me a quick example. Just a quick example.
I can't give an example off the top of my head, but sometimes it's like it depends on the rights holder, because sometimes like it feels like bots are sometimes doing it for the copyright claims and stuff like that. So I'm not sure exactly how it works on YouTube, but I know it can be a minefield and stuff like that, creating videos depending on the music you put in, the videos you show and stuff like that, and how much, because sometimes even if it's a few seconds, they can pick you up and either demonetize you, or it like they can take down your video depending on how many strikes, I guess, they're against your channel. But it leads to another one, actually, the second Anime News Network article where they talked to Taro Yamada. And so I guess he was doing some Q&As with different people, and they're still doing, I guess, their research into it, how they want the laws going forward. And he had an interesting discussion with Haru Tachibana, a popular cosplayer, and they were asking about Twitter and posting your photos and that of your cosplay on Twitter, and how that could be a minefield. And then he brought up the interesting thing, I thought, was what happens if you retweet those images. And he said that the act of retweeting and spreading them could potentially be seen as violation of public transmission rights and stuff like that. And that just blew my mind. That's crazy.
I would love to see them. I would love to see them enforce that. That would be incredible.
I think that's what
And that's why I
was the
went
sticking
back to
point.
the YouTube example, because I'm wondering, like, would then Twitter have to do, and all these social medias, they'd have to add all these crazy bots in there? It's like the bots aren't exactly like humans, because some of these people have to go and say, hey, this isn't right, and they have to fight it. And sometimes it takes time to fight these things to have the human touch, right?
The
Jeff?
bots are incredibly flawed. Like at least on YouTube, I was listening to the channel Good Vibes Gaming, I think today, and they were mentioning they had partnerships with a company they were streaming with, and they still got flagged by those companies because all these bots are automated. And I think we saw just recently it ended up being a fabrication, but with the Shonen Jump story with Shueisha, the even though they were kind of a fake, it was a fake situation. The idea of these bots for things like cosplay is going, at least it has the potential of being a ridiculous disaster, really, because are these laws going to just apply to Japan, which has a completely different set of not only copyright law but also just general attitude when it comes to fandom. Like, they have, I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, just the idea of this dojin culture, which is essentially just fan works. Like, people aren't really selling or making a lot of money on original content at these sorts of places, at least not to the same extent as, derivative works. And, if someone's cosplaying, standard character like Goku or something, how are they going to tell if it's a Halloween costume or not? Is a Halloween costume against is it a violation? Is it a violation if you're a nobody? Is it a violation if you have a verified check mark and you dressing up as Goku could drive people to your shop and accidentally and they buy more stickers and bookmarks? It's going to
It's
be messy if they try to
I
go
think
too forward with this.
Yeah, I think as you say all this, the phrase low-hanging fruit comes to mind. So to me, I guess it'll depend on how high up the tree do they want to go.
I think it's more of the high earners, as they would say, and
As I
stuff
said,
like that.
and that's what I meant, and that's what I'm referring to when I say
And
high
that
up the
would
tree,
probably
right?
be Japan specific and stuff like that. Not to say there
That's
are probably some very successful people here outside Japan and stuff like that,
mhm.
but they definitely take it, in my mind, it feels like, to another level when you think of the different revenue
Oh
streams they could
yeah.
have.
Oh, and like cosplayers, right,
Yeah,
Mike?
because we were
Hmm.
talking about photo books, appearances, the
Well,
cosplay
as I said,
itself,
it's to the
maybe
point.
doing their costumes as well, like possibly selling those rights or saying how to, like, there's
Many of them
infinite.
are represented by agencies. There's a handful of them, or a good chunk of them these days.
It's
Mhm.
it's
So
it's
And
really
it's crazy
interesting
because
because
you don't.
uh, go ahead, Jeff, and
yeah, no,
James.
it's interesting because the arguments that some of these people are making are not the ones that I would have expected them to bring up. If you look at, a company like, two incredibly different sizes, but Disney and Nintendo, who are both famous for coming down against, derivative and fan works in certain contexts, usually they're doing that to protect their public image, which, I kind of understand. You don't want to have Mario selling burritos and those burritos are poisonous and then,
I was about,
everything goes, to hell
I
there.
yeah,
You
I
don't want
was about to say Mickey
Spider-Man.
Mouse went by, but sure.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want Spider-Man going door to door, selling pyramid schemes or something. So, I could get that sort of attitude, but it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be more of what you're saying, Mike, about worrying that these creatives are making too much money. And yeah, they're making more money than maybe the individual animators or people low down on the ladder there. But I don't know if a lot of these cosplayers or fan artists are making more money than, say, Akira Toriyama or the heads of some of these animation and manga companies. I don't think that's happening. I could be wrong, but
Yeah, I guess that's the question mark. Who like the real beneficiaries, right? It could be it could be of benefit to a, well, not necessarily big company. I mean, that's a parallel I guess I could draw, but that's to make the accusation that Akira Toriyama is a greedy corporation.
Yeah, and
There's
I'm
only
not
so
saying
many
that.
they would go
Yeah.
after.
I'm not necessarily like, that's not what I'm necessarily saying. James.
No, I was just saying there's only so many they could go after. You could probably count them on maybe one or two hands, I would think. And at that point, are you really getting that much money out of it after all and stuff like that? Because
Well, yeah.
they're
Well,
only earning so much, but it's interesting because we go to the conventions, we see all the different cosplay, and there's some incredible costumes and all that stuff. So it's mostly, I still in my mind, it feels fan oriented. So it's interesting when you see in Japan, there definitely is more of a different aspect over there. It's definitely become more commercialized in some aspects, and they've, as you said, they've become bigger than some of the people that have either animated certain things or even other parts of the creation, right?
I guess we're saying all of this from completely on the outside, and at least speaking for myself, I've never had the chance to observe it in person, so I can get a better grasp at that. And I'm probably at the point in my own life where I'm not totally sure I ever will, because it's young. It's wonderful to be young sometimes.
What do you mean as far as they get to experience it?
Well, it's for seeing it in person, seeing it in action. But I think you have to be of a certain age to be able to appreciate it still. I mean, that's the impression I get, right?
It is a interesting because it is a completely different hobby or different situation in Japan. Like it is more of a professional type of I guess as I mentioned hobby. I think
Or
watching
field for that matter.
yeah, exactly. Watching Genshiken I think was what kind of first made me realize that, like, oh, cosplay is something different there. Like in North America, and I'm sure other countries around the world, in Europe, and Central and South America, there's different levels. There are professional cosplayers, people who get invited to conventions as cosplayers, but I'd say 80% are amateurs. We're making things out of duct tape and hand-me-down sewing machines and value village trips. It's completely different, and you don't find that in Japan outside of maybe Halloween or like that one weird art school or cool art school's graduation costume
Yeah, but
day.
it's just it's. Does it feel like an industry? Does it really feel like an industry sometimes?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say so in North America, at least on a large scale. There definitely are companies who cater to that kind of thing. Right before or right as the recent lockdown was happening, I was in a Michaels and they had a retail or like a product island, and it was all cosplay supplies. It was
Oh, that's interesting.
Wonderflex and heat guns and foam tubes of various shapes. I was really impressed. Like, I wish this existed when I was getting into the idea of cosplay. It would have saved me a lot of runs out to various types of stores. Um,
That's a line.
But they've had
That's a
many years ahead of us, I guess,
yeah.
if you think about it, that they've been able to develop that history in cosplay compared to
Well,
us in North
yeah. Once
America, of course.
again,
So I guess
Japan.
some of that creeps in, right? I guess.
Yeah,
yeah.
Japan. Once again, Japan being further along the timeline for better or
And I was
worse.
thinking back to, yeah, reading again, right, Mike? That's what I was
hmm
thinking there for a sec.
So, well, this is a kind of a fascinating story. Although on the other end of the scale, there was this, and this is related but not quite related. Vice put out a article this week about um, police activists who have noted that whenever they try and film cops these days, they make it a lot of cops have been blaring up copywritten music in the hopes
Oh wow.
in the hopes that uh, the algorithm shines down upon them and forces a takedown of the video should it be uploaded.
It's a time-honored tradition of most protests.
It's
I was laughing because didn't they use that to blare people out with using people's basic rock and roll stuff, and AC/DC got pissed about that. They
Yeah.
took some people and said, you can't be using our music to...
Well, yeah, it's just it's hilarious though.
Oh
So you
man,
have
that's
so you have
crazy.
cops playing copywritten music while being videotaped in hopes that it triggers some algorithms and and a video gets taken down off of YouTube.
I know I've seen that a lot in like right wing, not protests per se, but like those right wing people who interview people at protests. You know what I'm talking about? Like the people who go out of their way to like make big fusses about stuff.
Yeah, people have been theorizing that's been the story, and now there's this accusation that somebody like the police is trying to weaponize the concept.
And that's
right?
the law enforcement, not the band, the police, right?
Law enforcement
Okay.
using it to take down the or like
Bad
bad cops.
Police
Let's
Sting
call it.
was doing it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was joking about the police as the musical group, but okay.
Very good. Very good.
It's kind of funny because we forget about the Police, guys. Like, that's from so long ago. It's like more people would probably remember Sting was probably in that band or think Sting was the Police than the Police was
There's
actually
enough
a
people. There's
band.
enough people out there right now who equate Sting to a famous wrestler. So, okay.
Wait, are we talking about the movie Sting, or what are we talking about?
Oh, and then see, now we're all over the place.
It's a tool that injects venom. Several insects and arachnids have stingers.
Back to the insect talk. Thanks a lot.
This where
Okay.
you inserted the crickets again, Mike?
Lots of insect references, huh? All right, let's go. Let's move on. Item: Malaysia. James, do you want to go with this one? You're the one who pointed this one out.
Well, yeah, this one was about, I guess, in Malaysia, saying a Malaysian comic magazine was censoring Attack on Titan by putting pants on them.
Basically,
And
the Giants, right?
so
I've
all
seen this
I'm
picture
thinking
now.
about when I'm hearing about that is I'm thinking, Dan, The Simpsons did it again. And I'm like, I wonder if David ever made it to Malaysia, would they put pants on him? And what pants would those be? And the other thing I thought about
They'd
in
probably
this
be biking
too,
shorts. According to Attack on Titan, they could be biking shorts, but okay.
and the other thing I was thinking about is like Attack on Titan, of course, is so popular now, so they're doing different after shows on May, the different streaming ones. I think Crunchyroll has one, ANN has one as well, I believe. They do the Monday after, they do an after show.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
that's
I
right.
was thinking this could be better if they had the pants on the Titans because they could have something different to talk about in each episode, something more to go into.
Yeah, it's worth noting. What's it called? ANN After Show has been announced as the official successor to the ANN cast. So this
Mm.
is their first regular show aside from the what is it? The interview videos
Yeah,
that
I
they
feel
do.
like it's ANN Connect and
ANN
A.
Connect and ANN After Show, and ANN Cast has been basically becomes an umbrella for all the other shows they do, and that's sort of the legacy. Actually, Christopher McDonald kind of tweeted some stuff in relation to that earlier in the week, referring to the ANN Cast as Zach's legacy, and it'll live through with these new shows. So, yeah, sorry about that. I probably broke your train of thought there.
Do you think they'll add a bra to the female Titan?
Good question. Good question.
It's always
Yeah,
interesting when you get into censorship just to see how they do certain things. I'm not sure if it really worked out, seeing the tweets of how they did the biker shorts and stuff like that.
I was, aside from The Simpsons, the other thing that's now come to mind, remember Tenjo Tenge? Way
Yeah,
back?
I remember
That's the
Tender
other
Tenge.
thing.
And I think about City Hunter too when it first came out here, and oh, I forget the name that came in, but the creator, remember, of City Hunter tried to launch that through English and stuff like that. So he was in the office and they said, hey, we need to censor this in City Hunter. And he just drew over, did whatever on his own drawings, which is kind of funny. I think it was Raijin Comics or something like that, I think.
Yeah, well, see, once again, sometimes it's with the permission or with the blessing of the creator. And once again, coming back to our conversation with Matt Holt.
The weird thing here is that the Titans don't have genitalia. So I am curious I'm very worried I'm going to bring this up absolutely every time, every episode until April, but the designs for a lot of the Shaman King characters are coming out, and and Ponchi, who is the Tanuki, has the giant Tanuki testicles in the updated anime. And I'm not even sure if North America is going to be okay with that one.
It's an animal. It's
So,
okay.
sure.
I was gonna say about giants that you know what? Maybe they should do this for North America as well because the friendly giant and then the jolly green giant they wore clothes. Why shouldn't Titans?
Uh,
I'll bite my tongue at that point.
No.
All right, moving on.
hmm
Okay, item. Netflix. Well, Netflix has made the news, and this was on Sora News, and I mentioned this to you guys yesterday, I believe. And it's a reflection as to how all in Netflix is going into the anime stuff. We've talked about that before, right? Times are changing, I guess. Streaming Giant has opened up a course. They've teamed up with Wit Studio, which is known for Attack on Titan, also known to me personally for Great Pretender. The two are teaming up to start an animation course run by a former member of Studio Ghibli. A 6-month course. Netflix foots the bill in terms of foots the bill in the form of a scholarship and even for living expenses. I think it's going to be done online though, called the Wit Animator Academy, and anyone who successfully completes the course will be retained as subcontracted animators for any Netflix projects, animated projects done with the studio and production IG. It's kind of interesting to hear. The thing is, I think it's only it does have to be applied for. There'll be some competition because there's only going to be 10 spots per term,
some competition.
And where is it available, Mike?
and it's
Is
only
it
available to Japanese citizens or foreigners with permanent status in Japan
okay?
between the
Makes
ages of 18 to 25. So, their chance to save some of the lost youth.
People are going to theoretically kill for that, for a position there, because that's a dream scenario.
It sounds
And
like it could be. Yeah, that's a fair statement because you work hard to get noticed, and if you get noticed in this scenario, even if it doesn't necessarily work out with Studio Wit, you have something to work with. You have something on that resume.
And with that few people, you're going to make some great networking opportunities there. And, as far as Netflix goes, it's a great investment for the future. For the participants, I think it's a great investment for the future. It seems, from a very outsider position, like a pretty smart move all around.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, they could take this one step further, guys, and just make it into a reality TV show.
oh god,
Make it like some kind of like American Idol type competition, but like for Netflix animators.
I think
you're off the island. You're off the island.
at least it's going to be better than what Stu Levy tried to do with that bus trip across North America or America.
Oh wow.
Don't you
I'm
remember
gonna
that
pretend
reality thing?
Vaguely,
So
yes.
we have
it
dragged
was
that
messed up.
memory up again.
Vaguely, and
It's like
and
on a bus
to the
with
point.
TJ Milky himself.
Yeah, vaguely to the point that I had blocked that out of my mind. Thanks a lot, James.
Yeah, thanks, James. Like, we need to give Stu Levy more attention.
I want to say, Kevin, just to say one good thing that they did this year, they finished all of Aria, and I have it all now. So that's one good thing Tokyo Pop did this year. So I
One
guess
good
my
thing
triumph.
does not undo the load of bad things that he has done in the past 10 to 15 years.
I was about to say lifetime, but okay.
I was gonna say probably Lifetime was a better thing because they were kind of dead for the last 10 years, weren't they? Before they
Yes.
revived.
Yep.
All right. Well, this sounds like it's on the outside. This sounds pretty cool. Not a single yen. Netflix footing the bill.
I
It's
guess the proof
amazing.
will be in the pudding, I think. We'll have to see how it
Proof
goes.
will be, yeah. I guess we won't know the real results until, well, the what is it? The program apparently begins in April and runs till September. So I guess we'll start to understand how it's going a few years from now.
I'm just
I can't
wondering
say
how
at
they're
this point
gonna.
next year.
I'm just wondering how they're going to pick these 10 people.
Well, applications begin at the end of this month through a website that is mentioned in the article. With a practical skill exam and interviews, as well as a final selection process, which will take place throughout March.
I'm telling you guys, just American Idol for animators.
I think a documentary would probably be the more respectable way.
Sure, why not?
Sure,
And
you just want to be entertained by this, don't you,
I
Don't
Geoff?
mean, I
want
would
you
love this
to
to
want
be
the
like a
last.
week thing with like a live voting process, and like we get to learn about each animator and their backstories and whatnot, and you know they live in a house together and animate by
You know,
day.
you know what's the funny part? You know
Oh,
what's the funny part? Netflix could commission that too.
They should.
They could commission that too. Either
because
that, or we could be once again entertained by seeing one of the animators in front of Miyazaki and him trashing their work. Be
Wonder
interesting.
who the
speaking
algorithm would send that way to watch that program.
speaking on behalf of artists, there is enough mental health issues that people in the animation industry have already that doing a reality show would, I think, actually be cruel and unusual punishment, or
Oh
maybe cruel
wow,
and
that's
usual punishment.
fair point. Fair
That's
point.
why a documentary would be better. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Something
Hmm.
more respectable and stuff like that.
so,
And
so so no Hell's Kitchen anime edition.
no.
I'm really curious if there are going to be any women animators here, because theoretically, if there's that many like applying, I think it's an opportunity to support a group that doesn't really get a lot of representation or possibilities to be fostered and be and have that level of growth and recognition. I don't
100%.
expect it, but
Yeah, that's
it's
actually a well said. Well pointed out.
that's why
And
it'll
I
be interesting to see how they pick everyone,
yes,
right?
yeah, and
Because
that'll be
hopefully
interesting to
it'll
see.
be.
We'll be curious to see the first class photo in that sense.
Oh, dude, that'd be something. I mean, I'm wondering how involved is Netflix on this. I mean, I know Studio Wit's doing the program and everything, but I'm assuming Netflix has their hands in this at some point, so they probably have some kind of oversight.
Aside from providing the money, that's what you're
I
thinking.
hope it's aside from providing the money. Imagine providing the money and the class comes out and it's just like not good people.
Like not good in what way? Talent wise, or they're just rotten characters.
Pick it, you name it. You know, it's all of the above. I don't know.
You just want the camera there so you have your reality show, don't you?
Pretty much, yeah, guys.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Oh.
Okay, well, on the note of being opportunistic, item Pokemon Happy Meals. Can't find them anywhere. What is this?
1997.
All over again.
I was told that Pokemon Mania was a fad. It's gonna die out.
Isn't it the most
Well, you were
profitable
misinformed.
media franchise in the world?
Well,
That Nintendo is a part of. But it's
in terms
just
of that
kind of
type of ecosystem.
crazy that all these tweets about people just going after Happy Meals and hopefully they're not being thrown away.
Well, yeah,
Hopefully.
thrown away. Well, some people are apparently throwing away the food or not. Ah.
And the other thing
At
is
least
some
some
people
people
that
are.
are on eBay selling boxes, so obviously those never made it.
Ugh.
Yeah, so some of those are probably employees.
But the funnier
Yeah,
part
but
And
is
that
how
wouldn't
else
be the
would they
first
have gotten
time.
it?
That
Oh, I
would not
think
be
it
the
was
first time
definitely.
employees have done that at McDonald's because of the Travis Scott collaboration that happened a while back.
Travis Scott, jog my memory a
He's
bit.
a
The
he's a rapper. He had a
famous rapper.
his thing with McDonald's was pretty hilarious.
Okay.
Or the
Yeah,
I was thinking the Monopoly story
oh
actually.
yeah, the McMillions. Yeah,
Oh no! So
or
Yeah,
people would
but this is
sell
more
their
recent.
jerseys, like their uniforms and stuff, for extra
Okay.
profit.
Hmm.
the Rick and Morty situation from a few years ago as well, with McDonald's. They
The
have a lot
Szechuan
of,
sauce.
I mean,
yeah.
we've seen
With the
like
My Little
okay,
Ponies.
yeah, we like.
They made
Mhm.
mention of Tim Hortons, and supposedly this happened with the hockey cards they were doing for the past few years. And I'm like, really, that happened?
With
I
that
couldn't believe that one.
with Nathan McKinnon and Sidney Crosby hawking those. Look, the thing is, okay, upshot is, yeah, people are scooping them up, buying Happy Meals en masse. Sometimes not eating the food that comes in it. So anybody who's at least like some people have at least mentioned that to be fair to them, they've at least kept the food and given it to homeless shelters or people on the street, homeless on the street. So that's fair. Okay. They're not apologizing for going after the cards. Maybe I have some issue with that, but at least they're not wasting the food. So okay, I can go with that.
But you can, at least in Canada, you can buy those Happy Meal toys separately. Well, in this case, they're cards, but that's a thing. You can buy them on their own.
Okay, it's just this is something else altogether, though.
And
I mean, we're
also, we
talking
don't have
about
this in Canada at the moment.
yeah.
Although,
I didn't even know there was such a promotion. I mean,
yeah, because it was like apparently McDonald's Canada is aware of it, but
mhm.
uh, and I think they may bring it up here, but there has not been any confirmation so far as I'm aware.
Well, they're more worried about giving away too many free fries after Raptors games.
Well, if they were really that worried, they would have stopped that promotion.
No, yeah, kind of like Harvey's ending free hamburger day during anime because of Anime North.
I'm I'm surprised that happened even once. That was hilarious.
That was awesome.
I mean,
That was awesome.
a
That
lot
would have
of
been like I was waiting for a YouTube moment right there, but that I think that ended before YouTube ever existed. I don't know.
I think they would have loved the free like press and stuff like that. But anyway,
That was just hilarious.
they
So,
did their best with a very difficult circumstance.
yeah, nothing really of their fault. It's just bad timing. But then it ended the whole thing for everybody, really.
You think they would have? You would think that specific restaurant would have just said, "We're not doing it," and that would have been that, and because they would have still had the business anyway.
That's true. Captive audience.
But who knows, really?
Well, yeah, that too. Actually, when you bring this stuff up, I think of similar stories along the Pokemon vein in over the years, right? I remember when the first movie came out in theaters, I think in the late 90s, they had a promotion in movie theaters where kids coming in to watch the movie would get a free card.
I remember this.
And then you'd hear stories of like one or two guys buying up all of the seats so they can get the cards.
Wait, what movie was this?
The first Pokemon movie. This was like way back in the 90s.
Yeah, the same
But
thing with the
then,
Yu-Gi-Oh movie that came out too. Yeah, I remember this.
but the
Yeah.
thing is that like
Like this,
what? How would what kind of asshole would do that? First of all, and then second of all, so when you
well,
go to the movie to the screening, what you're just gonna show up and say, "Hey, like I actually bought the theater. Can you
tickets,
give me all the cards?" Like
tickets.
really?
Show the tickets. Show the tickets. Here's the proof. Give me. I mean that I mean it's I think my take probably legal, certainly dickish.
The theater gets its money
Doesn't
either
get
way.
yeah, well, yeah, in that sense. Well, but the thing is they don't get any residuals on any popcorn. I think that's where
Yeah.
they really
Yeah,
make
so
money.
really the theater is probably losing money there,
They're at best by
considering
30.
how much percentage they make from concessions.
See? As I
Yeah.
said, probably legal, but it's very dickish. Guy ain't getting dick immunity on that one.
But this is not the first time that's happened even in the past year. Like we've seen like various Pokemon sets like for the trading card game. They've been marked up in price
$2 million.
because people are looking
Need
for
$2 million.
people are looking for specific Charizard Pokemon cards that will easily pay for your booster box and then some So retailers have marked up those specific sets accordingly. And then because this is also the anniversary year for Pokemon, so there have been special collaborations with different like companies releasing different kinds of product. And there was a skateboard deck, I think, that came out a while ago, and of course those got eaten up by bots and scalpers.
Well, I mean,
So this is nothing new.
no.
People underestimate how popular and powerful Pokemon still is. Like there's a chain of, amazing stores in Japan with animatronic Mewtwo's floating in a vat of, technology that like greets you at the newest store. Like it's ubiquitous over there, and it's still relatively popular here. The latest game was mired in controversy and is still, I think, the second best-selling Pokemon game ever. So,
Wow.
this is going to happen, and you know, I love Pokemon. Good for it.
Gift in some
Same
respects, the
here,
gift that
man.
keeps on giving, but the gift that keeps on giving. I do have one more little related story, and this one involves Charlie Sheen, because there was this incident. I remember this. I think 20 some odd years ago, he bought out the entire, I think, left field bleachers at an Angels game. I think it was an Angels game. All the seats in the immediate, just behind the left field wall, in hopes of catching a home run ball.
Oh,
Yeah, dude,
And
that was a big story, man.
that was a big
2,600 seats.
Mhm.
That's like
bought out.
madness.
You know about this, right?
He paid $6,000 for this, man. It's ridiculous.
And nothing came close that night.
he didn't do it often enough. He needed to do it on consecutive days.
He probably could afford it to. Although the stadium doesn't make any on hot dogs. Pokemon, gift that keeps on giving. McDonald's Canada and McDonald's in the States, I think, are really separate, are very separate entities. So that's probably why the Canada hasn't seen it yet.
That's
And
probably why.
yeah, and they will do so at their own discretion and at their own peril. Okay, on the note of collecting, one final bullet, and I file this under the somebody keeps a record of this. U.S. man breaks record of largest collection of Cardcaptor Sakura memorabilia. Congratulations.
And you saw how many items. He has a collection of 4,873 items, and it looks like the last recorded record holder in 2017 from Peru only had 1,086 items.
Smashed it.
The real question is,
Crushed it.
does that include card captors?
Oh, wait.
Or just card captors?
Oh no, I can see it. I can see it I can see it in the picture. It's in the picture.
Oh,
Yes.
it's in the picture?
It's in
Oh,
the picture.
wow.
Look to the right by the original keychain wand. The beak. Just look second box.
Oh, I
front,
see what you
right.
mean by the NISA version.
Yes. It's there. Congratulations. No, it's more of a case
Oh,
of
yeah.
what, like, and apparently there's a Guinness certificate in the same photo. And like I said, on the topic of they actually keep up with this. I mean, good on this guy. Mr. Embledge. I think that's how you pronounce it. No, I mean, it's good to be a fan. Good
I
to
wonder
have that
how much of
passion.
it is in the house versus what's in storage. Makes me wonder.
That's a fair thing to ask as well.
And how many of his items are doujinshi? That's what I want to know.
I wonder if that would count because you have the piece of cosplay in the photo there, and I'm wondering, does fan created? I wouldn't imagine fan works would count as memorabilia. Like I imagine it would have to be officially licensed. Otherwise, he could just draw like 1,000, of his own Clow cards and technically hold the record.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, in that sense, I would fathom how it's licensed.
It
That
says
said,
memorabilia, but yeah, that's an interesting
I
question.
guess that's a fair thing to ask.
The record was
I
already
would,
held, so I mean, I'm assuming that there's like rules around this because
Yeah.
Canadian crew had it. So.
otherwise, well, the thing is, I'm thinking it's licensed because there's a credibility at stake if it isn't, and Guinness has their name on it. So that's just the way I look at it. Although I guess having said all that and having been able to get a Junko Iwao autograph for a book, I wonder how much of that is autographed. That's all I'm wondering. But good on him. I mean, I think that's. I would think. I don't think badly of it. Really. I mean, I really don't. Or at least if there's a joke, it will be after the recording. Okay. But do you want to add anything else to that?
To
I'm
Card
just
Captor
I'm just
Sakura?
I'm just
Yeah, to
looking
this.
through his Tumblr, and it's an impressive looking collection there. So much Card Captor Sakura merchandise is pink. That percentage would have never happened if it would have taken off more in North America with, Nelvana's very blue and yellow focused Card Captors marketing.
Wow. Well, wow. Nice observation. Okay. I guess, and that's it for the bullets. Really, there isn't too much else to add for this episode, anime wise. Although you now have me wondering, Mohammed. Mohammed,
Yeah, what's up?
yeah, I'm just wondering. Did you go to the moon on GameStop? GameStop. I just thought I'd ask that before we end off this week.
No, so I think I might have misspoke last episode. It did not go to the moon.
It went to Hades, didn't it?
So where did it go?
It went on a little trip up, and then just came back down to the ground. I mean, it's like it's refueling. You got to give it a little bit of time to get up there. So don't worry, guys. We're gonna get to that moon soon enough.
Okay, let's see.
Quite high
Let me
relative to where
my
it
app.
used to be.
What is it? What's the sticker? Okay, so as of close yesterday, Friday the 12th, according to my ticker, GameStop stands at 52.40 US.
That's a lot better than where it began still, so.
Yep.
True.
It was
And
like
for the
$5
week,
at one point.
it was actually down $20 for the week. Yeah, well, let's not talk about the month. That's another story. But for the week, it was down $20.
Not going to save them, of course, but we'll see how it goes.
I have
Yeah,
a friend who made money.
where's Robin Hood headed? Where's the Robin Hood merry men all headed for now?
I don't know, man. They'll pick some new target, and then that'll be the thing, right? I mean,
They're not going to tell anyone.
Well, read the board. Read in between the lines of the Reddit board, I guess.
I don't know. I think it was one of those like momentary blips in history where something cool happened, and then like everyone forgot about it in a week.
Mm-hmm.
Except
Well,
for the
yeah.
regulators who are, I guess, now going to investigate and have no idea what they're investigating, probably.
It's
That's
not
the
that
problem.
people forgot. It's just that the institutions and the hedge funds, they got their wish in the end.
Well, yeah. I think it just comes down to what James just said. What are they really investigating? Okay, I guess before we end off this evening, just once around the table, what's on everybody's reading or watching list? Maybe we should put this in the show notes now. Just what's on everybody's queue, or what's presently.
So I finally broke down after your conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I got Jump
About.
Force. It's very fun.
The
Is it a
game.
work of art?
No, it's not.
If they had pants on the characters, would it be even better?
Yes,
Oh my
yes, it
goodness.
was. That was my first complaint. Lack of pants.
Geoff.
I don't think anything in the pure Japanese mode, aside from the weekly releases of things like Pokemon. But I am, keeping up with WandaVision. So that is on its way to be finished in a couple weeks, I believe.
Is anyone else watching WandaVision other than?
I don't have a Disney subscription. I mean, I'm on a bit of a budget at the moment.
Yeah,
Although
myself neither.
although with and we since we talk about streaming services, remember, just a quick reminder that Disney Plus is set to go up $30 annually. I think on the 22nd or 23rd,
Oh,
because
Wow.
it's to celebrate the add-on of Star Plus, which is essentially the Hulu-esque programming add-on. Like Hulu, like yeah, Disney has said they'll add a lot of stuff that would have been on Hulu now to Disney Plus outside of the US,
oh, okay.
but you're
Oh,
gonna have to
okay.
pay
I
for
see
it.
what you mean because yeah, Hulu stuff never was available to us.
Well, yeah, they're now going to start adding it, but it'll be under another branding. That's Star Plus, and they haven't released some of the initial stuff, and it's through the history of Fox and Touchstone and all that stuff. So it might be worth. Well, if you want Disney Plus, you're getting Star with it. So, and Star Plus is branding that's been in other parts overseas, associated with streaming services that Disney has its fingers in as well.
That
Yeah, it's
did remind me. The English dub of Doctor Stone is finally got an announcement last week or the week before. I think it is this coming week. So I'm very excited to finally be able to check that out. It was really late minute announcement of the dub, so I'm glad that is finally going to be accessible for me.
Cool. Kevin.
Huh. Well, I still got to read JoJo. It's been sitting on my shelf for 4 weeks, and I haven't been able to get around to it because I've just been very preoccupied with other things. I have maybe 2 weeks of Shonen Jump chapters to read and I have to read those tonight, or else I lose access to them
Okay.
because I don't pay for the service anymore. Uh, I finished the first Haruhi novel finally.
Okay.
That was
Before you ship them off.
no, those shipped off in December.
Okay, so
This was a library copy that I borrowed because
way
I
to go.
did start reading volume 1 and then it sold, so then I had to ship them out. And I'm very slowly reading through Twin Speaka,
All right, there you go.
which is really good. Fantastic manga. I also, actually, one more thing. I'm actually going to catch up on Saga soon, the comic, because
Oh, cool.
I'm joining a group read of that. So I figured, well, that's a good excuse for me to catch up. I fell behind on it years ago, so I'm interested to see where it is at now. I am aware it's on hiatus, though.
Okay. You should be fine.
Yeah, it's pretty good. One of the very few Western comics I was reading a few years ago. That and Miss Marvel.
Both are excellent.
Not bad.
Indeed.
James.
Well, it's like I've been looking at a few things, but I'll throw out a few points of interest I saw this week. Well, this month, Seven Seas Each Day at 5 p.m. Eastern our time on the East Coast is announcing a new manga or light novel every day for February.
Oh
And they've had a lot
yeah.
of interesting titles from Shueisha, from Kodansha and stuff like that. So even if Kodansha USA and Viz are still there, they can't release everything. But if I had to choose one title so far, and a lot of them are coming out soon, so August, September. But one that I would recommend that looks really interesting is called The Masterful Cat is Depressed Again Today. And
Oh, I
basically
heard about this one.
and this is about a woman named Saku who took in a stray black cat. But this black cat is basically a housekeeping life partner, as they say, for it because it cooks for her, it does her vacuuming, it cleans her laundry, it does the whole thing while
Jesus.
she's at work earning the bacon, and it's
Oh my
just something else. And it sounds very intriguing. So that would be one to look. I think they said the first volume for that is going to be coming out in September of 2021. So that'll be nice to see that one. And I don't think it's too long as well. So that would be an easy one to pick up on. And then the other thing I would say is I was watching, I finished it, was I backed the Kickstarter of Victorian Romance Emma from Right Stuff.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
And that
old
one
school
was quite
on the
enjoyable.
topic.
I think they really nailed it with the English accents and stuff like that. I know they did with Joe DiGiulio, I believe, from Headline Studios in New York City, but they had some expats, they had some different people that obviously were American actors, but they really worked on getting those accents and trust me, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference. Like they really, really put all their effort in. I think it was a fantastic dub, especially for a period piece, because those are hard to do. But the interesting thing though is, as they said, they try to give backers a bit of time and stuff like that. And so I think for Arya, they gave about a year. Now, for the international backers, that didn't work out because they had to wait to ship our stuff out. But for Emma, unfortunately, it's like because of COVID and that, they had delays. They finally got them out to us the end of 2020. That's great. We all got, but it sounds like they've just solicited the first volume of Victorian Romance Emma Blu-ray out for the beginning of May. So if you do want a chance to listen to the fantastic dub and the original Japanese version as well, you can pre-order it now on their website for Right Stuff and get it in May probably.
Emma's so good. So good.
I'm pretty sure Angela would agree.
And it's interesting with the anime that being re-released. We're finding out that Emma the manga is starting to go to print for Yen Press. So it's just an interesting situation going on with that franchise. Yeah, the Volume 4 omnibus is out of print right now, and
Do you
they're
think?
probably will not be reprinting it. Actually,
That's kind of
that's what I've
interesting
been hearing through the
considering.
grapevine.
Yeah, you had me wondering though. What gives with the popularity with its sudden newfound popularity? Would it be the rise of Victorian era dramas in recent years?
No, I think it's
Being
just that Sean loves Emma, Sean Kleckner, that is, and
pet project. Okay.
Well, I think it
So
was
I
the
guess
success.
could this be number two behind Captain Tyler or something? Remember we had that discussion.
I
oh
think he
yeah,
Series
loved.
at
I
the Pine
think he
Company.
loved the series, but I think in this case, remember they looked at Kickstarter as way because they had told fans, it's like Emma was the first one where they didn't do a dub, and they said, well, the cost, the opportunity cost, and the cost effectiveness just isn't there anymore, especially
yeah.
as a smaller distributor and stuff like that. So
That
with
was around that
Kickstarter, they
time,
got
yeah.
with Kickstarter, they really got a big boost from Aria and stuff like that. So they're like, okay, if this really did well, then we'll try another one. And they went with Emma. And I think Emma was a good one to go with as well because you
Yeah.
had the fan base there. And I think it really would benefit from an English dub for that one, especially if done right. And they really took the care and they wanted to spend the time and the resources to get it right. And you wouldn't have done that with the normal, I think, anime budget or the normal way you would go about it. You know what I mean? Because it's a
Yeah.
period piece.
Well,
It's
and it's perfect for the setting, I guess.
mhm.
Maybe it's ideal. I mean, something would be wrong about a Victorian era story not being in English.
But sometimes,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I get it. It's an anime, but it's set. Yeah, you know what I mean, right?
mhm. But sometimes it's interesting how they go, right? But sometimes fans can't tell the difference, right? Because we've seen that with remember way back in the day, Helsing and some other ones where they were saying this wasn't right, but they're like, no, these are real English people doing like from England, some of them doing these voices, and they talked about an ROD and licensed by Royal, and they did incredible jobs even back then.
Hmm.
So it takes time and effort.
Yeah, sometimes people are just stubborn,
Yeah, it's like sometimes you don't hear the accent, so it's like what you think in your mind sometimes too, right?
right?
Hmm.
Okay, and I guess for me, I guess it's my turn. There are officially 2 nights left in the JFF Plus that was mentioned at the beginning of the episode. So I'll be chasing down those any part of the last 5 movies that are on the docket. Of note to me, this evening's three films are Dance with Me, The Great Passage, and Little Spider Girl, which is a short done by Production IG again, I think. But Dance with Me seems to be the one that has my attention since it's a musical comedy. And then on the final night for Valentine's Day, Little Nights, Little Love is probably on my to watch list, hopefully. But those are the three. Those are the three that I would like to see before the festival ends. And I guess I'll go into a longer story about what I saw during the JFF Plus another time. I get the feeling I'm going to be talking to myself on this one, on my mind. And in terms of, but before the festival happened, there was one thing that was on my Netflix queue that I had been watching. I finally got around to watching Beastars. Or I'm only halfway through it. Really, I've only gotten through the first 6 episodes though, and yeah, fun, really interesting, actually, really interesting.
It's a pretty good series.
I'm impressed. I'm
one of my favorites from last year for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of surprised pleasantly by it. Although, what's the pedigree of the daughter of the writer again?
Paru
She's the daughter
of a Keisuke Itagaki who creates Baki the Grappler.
Yeah, that's right. She's the daughter of the creator of Baki. So, good pedigree. Good pedigree right there, and good story so far. It's a teen. It feels like a teen drama, but you put in the aspects of the animals that they are, right? That's what it feels like. But it's kind of a unique premise, the way I'm looking at it, at least so far. Maybe I'll have more thoughts on it after I finish this initial phase, the initial 12 episodes. I know it's set to continue later on.
Yeah, so long as you can, I feel like if you can get past the fact that these are all animals, like you'll find that it's a very engaging, thought-provoking show.
I think the animal aspect adds another layer to their dilemmas. Add an interesting layer.
Yeah, it's just that I have friends who will not watch it because, but it's furry. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, and well, remember the main female is a bunny, and we know what bunnies do. You got that joke, didn't you?
Yes, and it sounds about right.
Yeah, it sounds about. As I said, their aspects, what is it? Primeval.
Mm-hmm.
Their primeval aspects, as the animals, as an animal, add an interesting layer to their dilemmas. That's really the way I put it. That's the only way best way I can put it right now. But it's already engaging just on that aspect for me.
I'm buying the manga right now, actually. I'm a little behind, though. I'm a little behind because I had to start panic buying Higurashi.
Yeah. Well, as I said, that's the only way I can consume things at the moment because I'm just actually reading regular books. That's another story altogether, and maybe I'll save that for off air. Anyway, that's on our lists, and we'll update them. I guess that's how we'll be updating them every episode, so people know where we are and we can give our thoughts. Thanks a lot, guys. And that's all we got for this evening. A quick reminder again where you can reach us: Anime Roundtable at gmail.com, at Anime Roundtable, animeroundtable.com. Also, don't forget to leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts if possible, because reviews, and especially good reviews, will help our chances in the algorithm and hopes it can shine on us and maybe get us more exposure to other people who might listen to this show. We typically do episodes every other week, but once in a while we'll do something in consecutive weeks too. But subscribe to us so you can be reminded whenever something new has dropped in the feed. Until next time, good night from Toronto. Join us again for another edition of the Anime Roundtable. I better stop the recording before we further incriminate ourselves.
I like to believe that he's a very proud nerd, and he had to hide all his sports memorabilia.